Rodney Orr with us to talk Alabama football and more. You ready to rock and roll, Rodney?
I'm ready.
Hey, let's start out with, we'll get to spring football in just a moment, but part of spring football, of course, is the annual Clinic of Champions, the coaching clinic that Nick Saban and his staff put on this year, April 12th through the 14th, right in the middle of spring ball. High school coaches from around the country flock to this event, and I don't blame them. Listen, everybody has a coaching clinic, Rodney. We know that, but few coaching clinics have the clout of a Clinic of Champions put on by Nick Saban. This lineup, you've got the reigning Super Bowl champion head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson, plus another Super Bowl winning coach, Mike McCarthy of the Green Bay Packers, not to mention Neil Brown from Troy, Jeff Collins from Temple, Dr. Kevin Elko, Coach Saban's personal motivation coach, Dana Holgerson from West Virginia, former Florida head coach Ron Zook. If I'm a high school coach, brother, you better believe I'm on the sign-up list. What a lineup, Rodney, and that says a lot about what Alabama football is all about, to be able to attract year in and year out these type of lineups for the coaching clinic.
Yeah, I think it's a very great opportunity for these coaches to come in, certainly listen to those speakers and learn from those guys. And clearly it's a great opportunity for Alabama, because what you really want to do is you would like to attract as many of these coaches, get them on campus, these high school coaches from all over, primarily probably the southeastern area, but a lot of coaches come from all over the country to be a part of this. You have junior college coaches that come, and, it allows you, Gary, opportunities to have these guys on campus to learn more about your program, to see how you do things as well, and, build those relationships with those guys, because let's be honest, too. Now, a lot of this comes back to recruiting. I mean, if you get these coaches on get your coaches on these campuses, on your campus, and they have an opportunity to learn things about your program, feel comfortable with it, down the road, you never know when you have opportunities in recruiting to that it really could be helpful to you.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And that's what you're doing. You're building a bridge between yourself and these high school coaches, and I don't think there's any doubt about it, Rodney. It's geared toward recruiting, but as you were saying, it's just a special opportunity, though, for these coaches to not only hear from Nick Saban and the Alabama staff, but can you imagine if you were a coach and they're going to bring in Doug Peterson, who just bested the Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, and Coach McCarthy? I mean, it's a great learning opportunity for these high school coaches as well.
Oh, like I said, tremendous. I mean, it's a great opportunity for them to, learn from these guys, hear things that maybe they do, how they do things. Again, all these coaches are looking for opportunities not only to enhance their programs, Gary, at their schools, but also enhance their, coaching opportunities, perhaps, grow as coaches. So I think all of these things are extremely helpful, and to be able to attract these kinds of guys, certainly it's beneficial to all.
Rodney Orr with us here on the Bud Light Hotline on the Gary Harris Show. The quarterback room is going to get a little more crowded. Not in time for spring, but it has been officially announced. And by the way, folks, Rodney Orr was the first to put out on TiderInsider.com to expect a graduate transfer quarterback. He had been saying for some time that it was going to be Gardner Minshew from East Carolina. That's going to happen. He will not go through spring. He'll come in late May. But let's talk about this and what it means for Alabama. First of all, this guy's a very accomplished quarterback. He threw for 2,140 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 7 picks last year. Missed several games. Down the stretch, those final 5 games, he lit it up. I think, and I've said for the record, Rodney, I think both Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts are going to be on this team in 2018. That's my personal feeling. But if something happened that it didn't work out that way, this guy's an excellent insurance policy. Plus, he'll come in with the idea that he's going to compete. As we've talked about before, Nick Saban's philosophy is you can never have enough good football players. Of course, obviously, you got Mac Jones as well, but 3 scholarship quarterbacks, not that many to begin with. And if one left, you would be down to 2. I think this is a huge pickup for Alabama. Your take?
Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, I think that's exactly the way you summed it up. I mean, he's you want to have 4 on scholarship, no question about that. That is the goal. It's always the goal. Last year, Alabama only had 3, and I can't remember when the last time Alabama had less than 4, to be honest with you. You certainly don't want to be less than 3. you're really in a precarious situation there. Is there a chance that, there's been scuttlebutt that, if Tua is the starter, which a lot of people think will happen, that maybe Jalen would consider leaving, transferring to another program. That's certainly something that's not out of the realm of possibility. So you do want to have an insurance policy. Gardner Minshew is an outstanding player. You mentioned his statistics there. Threw for a ton of yards in those last 4 or 5 games and numerous touchdowns. So he was very successful in his year there at East Carolina, and he also was very productive in junior college where he won a national championship. I think it was at Northwest Mississippi. So, he's got a really qualified player, a very smart, intelligent quarterback who throws the ball really well. So he'll be a great addition to have there in terms of having that experience. He's a mature kid, so that's always something that's very valuable as well. So if you keep all 4 of those guys, then you've got to me, maybe the best depth chart in terms of quarterbacks, certainly one of the best depth charts in the country. But again, I do think if something were to happen that one of the players left, then, you have a great insurance policy there as well. And, some people say, well, why would Gardner Minshew want to come into this situation where there's a very the likelihood is great that he would never play or maybe not start, and he could have gone somewhere else possibly and been a starter. Well, he would have been a starter where he was at East Carolina. But the fact is that I think when you look at him, and we've said this all along, that he looks at the big picture. He understands that he's probably not going to be an NFL quarterback. I think he's set on that and understands that. He is looking to the future to become a coach, possibilities or the options of that. So what a greater opportunity than to come to Alabama, to be in this program, to see how it operates, to learn so many things. It's like the coaches you were talking about coming in for the clinic, Gary. They're enhancing their opportunities for the future by coming to these and learning. Well, the same thing with Gardner Minshew coming into this program, having the opportunity to go through it. And there is a chance that maybe he could play some. So we'll see what happens. But, I think all of those things played into his decision-making.
Yeah, you make a great point. And, again, it speaks to what Nick Saban has built here. You got a guy who, as you said, would have been the starter at East Carolina, could have transferred to numerous other places and probably had an opportunity to start. Here he's coming in with Tua Tagovailoa, who many feel will be one of the great passers in Alabama football history. Jalen Hurts, a 2-year starter, SEC Player of the Year as a freshman. But he has a chance, as you said, to be here to learn from Nick Saban, enhance his future opportunities. Again, you wouldn't find many programs where a guy with his resume would be willing to come in and put his hat in the quarterback ring, but he'll do it here. Speaking of the quarterbacks, as we get ready for spring football just a couple of weeks away, how do you think, and I know this is a tough question, Rodney, but I'm going to ask it anyway, how do you think that Mike Loxley and Dan Enos and Nick Saban will handle these quarterbacks in spring? You think they're going to split time 50-50 with Tua and Jalen? How do you think they'll go about preparing both these quarterbacks and letting them compete for that job?
Well, here's what I really think, Gary, is, spring is really about development. It's not so much about competition so much. I think that really what they'll do is that they'll continue to try to develop both of them, all of them, including Mac Jones, obviously, to improve them as players so that they can compete at the highest level, whether it's against each other or, when they eventually take the field. That's the real key to spring. It's not so much about, competing against each other as much as it is competing against yourself if you're one of those players, but also as a coach to develop these guys, because what you really want is you want as many of them to be prepared at the highest level to operate and execute your offense and to have an understanding of your offense as they possibly can have, so that's really enhances your opportunities when you go into the season to have as many guys ready, whether it's quarterbacks, offensive tackles, whatever it is. So I think that's the real key. When we look at this quarterback situation, people talk about the competition in the spring. I really think it's more about the development.
Yeah, well stated. Good point. Great point. When you look at this team going into spring, obviously you're always replacing football players. That's just part of it. You got to find a center, and of course the young wide receivers are expected to step up. Running back looks solid. Obviously quarterback is strong. Tight end looks good. offensive line as a whole. But on defense, there'll be some defensive linemen they're going to be looking to develop. But in that secondary, basically the entire starting secondary is gone with what you just said in terms of it being about development. But at the same time, they're going to be looking to identify some guys to be players for that secondary in 2018. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is once again, you're talking about an area of development that's probably maybe the greatest on the team in terms of need. I would think that the secondary, and I didn't know if you were going to mention it or not, but just look at the combine right now. Man, look at the guys Alabama lost, yeah. Gary. I mean, I heard Levi Wallace ran a 4.48, Tony Brown ran a 4.35, Anthony Averett ran a 4.36. I mean, look at the talent that Alabama's lost in that secondary. We're not even talking about Minkah Fitzpatrick and Ronnie Harrison, and Minka's a top 5, 10 pick, whatever he is. So, that's a lot of talent you're having to replace, and it is amazing. I mean, I go back to last year and I think about the injuries, Gary. No other team in the country, I don't think, maybe Ohio State, maybe they could have, had the depth to endure a season with those kinds of injuries. But, you look at the talent that Alabama's got. I mean, Deontay Thompson stepped in. Hootie Jones is obviously a guy that was a senior. He stepped in. Deontay stepped in, and he looked like a future star to me. I mean, again, I know he's got a lot of room for development. It's great that he's going to get that this spring. But you've got guys now like Shaheem Carter, who stepped in for Tony Brown. If you remember in the overtime when Georgia had the ball, Shaheem Carter was on the field. He was at the star position, if I remember correctly. So he's a guy that's going to have a great opportunity. Savion Smith, the transfer, former 5-star recruit that went to LSU, now at Alabama, looked great in the spring. And, again, this is an opportunity for him. Jared Maiden's another guy off the top of my head at a corner's position. In the deep spots, we mentioned Deontay Thompson. You've got Daniel Wright, a true freshman who played some last year. Xavier McKinney, another true freshman who played some last year. All of those guys, these are great opportunities for them. Kareem McDonald's another guy that comes to mind. And, again, I'm just going off the top of my head, so there's probably somebody you remember that I don't. But, all of those guys, I think they're all talented, but they've got a lot to learn, and that's what's going to be the focus this spring.
Yeah, the Combine, Alabama players are lighting it up. 14 of them were invited. Should have been 15. I still wish Bradley Bozeman had gotten an invite, but we'll all eagerly anticipate the draft again to see how many first-round picks come from Alabama. The 8A game, of course, the Golden Flake 8A game set for April 21st. That will wrap up spring football practice. When you look at this coaching staff now, Rodney, you've had a little bit of time to, since it's been announced, not quite 2 weeks ago, to look at it, kind of digest it. What's your feeling as it relates to this coaching staff that Nick Saban's put together for 2018? What do you think of it?
Well, a lot of people talk about maybe on defense where you have Tosh Lapoy would be the first time he'll be, calling a defense in a game. Some people are a little nervous about that. I guess that's the word, or uncertain. They express uncertainty when you talk about that. But, Tosh has obviously been developed here. He's been in the system with Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, also Jeremy Pruitt, obviously. But you have Pete Golding, who's called the defense before. You've got Carl Scott in the secondary, who had just been hired as the defense coordinator at Louisiana Lafayette. Coach Kulagowski, he's a guy that's a veteran that's been around a lot of great defenses here, at Missouri, Miami. So he certainly brings a lot of experience. I think collectively as a group, I feel pretty comfortable about that. Those guys as coaches, but also as recruiters too. And then on the offensive side, Dan Enos has obviously been around, was very successful as an offensive coordinator at Arkansas, really developed those quarterbacks, the Allen brothers, very well. Mike Loxley did a fantastic job. I thought at Illinois a couple of years they led the conference in rushing, 1 year in passing. So, again, collectively those look good. And Josh Gaddis has a lot of experience as wide receiver coach, co-offensive coordinator. So, he's certainly got a lot of experience. And on the special teams, Jeff Banks, I mean, that goes – this guy is really – and you probably would know this, Gary, as well as I do, that I don't know that Alabama's had a specialty coach like that, since I've been following.
I can never remember one.
Yeah,
with a kicking
background. The kind
of
experience and reputation that he's got. And all of these guys are outstanding recruiters. So, again, we expect the chemistry will be very good, and it's going to be interesting because this has been basically an overhaul of the staff.
Lastly, I know the forum there at TiderInsider.com is where I like to go just to kind of get a pulse for what the fans are thinking and saying when it comes to Alabama sports. A lot of basketball chatter lately, and the good news is Joe Lunardi still has Alabama in. Jerry Palm doesn't, but I think if Alabama can win on Thursday against A&M, certainly if they could beat Auburn, they would be in. But what's the feeling of the fans with the way this team collapsed down the stretch, going 0-5? And how big a disappointment do you think it would be for Alabama fans if this team doesn't get into the NCAA tournament with all this talent that they've assembled?
Yeah. Well, Gary, I read that this is, if Alabama were to lose 6 straight, that it would be the first time since like 1970.
Wow.
Have you heard that stat?
No, I didn't see that stat.
I was. Yeah.
It'd be hard to make a case for the NCAA tournament if you lose your last 6 games, wouldn't it, Rod?
Yeah, I mean, it really would. And even 5 straight, to be honest. But, there's a lot of disappointment because this team seemed to be right on the cusp. I mean, there were people that were, the extreme was saying, when Alabama was playing really well, that, hey, this is a team that's talented enough to make a really deep run not just get into the NCAA tournament, but make a really good run in it. So I think the fans got all excited, obviously, and for good reason. It's been a disappointment, obviously, and it's hard to put your finger on what happened. It's obviously, to me, Gary, though, it seems to be more mental, or maybe, I hate to speculate chemistry because I really don't know, but there have been obviously some issues that go beyond, playing ability, I think. And sometimes those happen to teams. And I'm really, I don't want to say I'm disappointed. I wish that they would have had a stronger finish to the regular season, obviously, because, I am a big fan of Avery Johnson, to be honest with you. And I hope that he does really, really well. But this is certainly a setback. There's no question about that.
No doubt about it. 10:20 a.m. here on the Gary Harris Show, wrapping up with Rodney Orr. Of course, as I stated, you've got a lot of information at TiderInsider.com, but that forum, I mean, it's worth the price of admission. It's a lot of fun. Don't always, you're not going to agree with everything everybody says out there, but you'll certainly get a lot of different opinions, won't you?
Well, you better never question Julio Jones's hands, Gary. I can tell you that.
I found out the hard way.
Yep. Yeah. It's certainly opinionated. TiderInsider.com. We provide the premium information, of course, on the front page, but there is a constant flow of information on the forum, Gary. If you want to keep up second by second with these combines, I mean, hey, listen, these people have the times out, the bench press numbers, the vertical jumps. All of these things are posted like immediately. So if you want to keep up with Alabama football, basketball, whatever it might be, certainly TiderInsider.com. Only $48 a year.
That's TiderInsider.com. Thanks a lot, Rod.
Okay, buddy. Take care.